Welcome, everyone. So, hope you're all doing well. So, I have a few more fairy tales that I'm going to read. I looked up an article because I typed into Google messed up Grimm's fairy tales, and I found an article that said that these five apparently could be made into horror movies. Now, I've never read them, so I don't know. And I did not bother looking at the descriptions of them in the article, so I didn't want to be spoiled by anything. So basically, be probably your first time hearing these stories and my first time telling them. Again, welcome everyone. Let me just do this. But again, welcome everyone. Anyway, so I got five. So there was like five in the article. A couple of them are pretty short, like pretty damn short. And then a couple of them are on the longer side. So we'll see how we go for time with this to see how long it takes. But without further ado, I'm gonna start with. Let me make sure I had like them all marked. So the first one is called Fitcher's Bird. All right. Now again, I have not read this, so I do not know. It's pretty short. It is pretty short, but welcome again, everyone. And I don't want to know. Last week's email, I saw your hashtag in the chat, and I would rather not know your search history, because it's probably effed by now. So the first one is called Fitcher's Bird. Anyway, Snow White: A Tale of Terror, while there were definite changes to the tale, was actually probably closer to the actual fairy tale than Disney's version. Anyway, there was once a wizard who used to take the form of a poor man and went to houses and begged and caught pretty girls. No one knew whether he carried them, for they were never seen more. One day he appeared before the door of a man who had 3 pretty daughters. He looked like a poor, weak beggar and carried a basket on his back as if he meant to collect charitable gifts in it. He begged for a little food, and when the eldest daughter came out and was just reaching him a piece of bread, he did but touch her, and she was forced to jump into his baskets. Thereupon he hurried away with long strides and carried her away into a dark forest to his house, which stood in the midst of it. Everything in the house was magnificent. He gave her whatever she could possibly desire and said, "My darling, thou wilt certainly be happy with me, for thou hast everything thy heart can wish for." This lasted a few days, and then he said, "I must journey forth and leave thee alone for a short time. There are the keys of the house. Thou mayest go everywhere and look at everything except into one room, which this little key here opens, and there I forbid thee to go on pain of death." He likewise gave her an egg and said, "Preserve the egg carefully for me, and carry it continually about with thee, for a great misfortune would arise from the loss of it." Oh yeah, we're off to a great start, Jam. She took the keys and the egg and promised to obey him in everything. When he was gone, she went all around the house from the bottom to the top and examined everything. The room shone with silver and gold, and she thought she had never seen such a great splendor. At length she came to the forbidden door. She wished to pass it by, but curiosity let her have no rest. She examined the key. It looked just like any other. She put it in the keyhole and turned it a little, and the door sprang open. But what did she see when she went in? A great bloody basin stood in the middle of the room, and therein lay human beings, dead and hewn to pieces, and hard by was a block of wood, and a gleaming axe lay upon it. She was so terribly alarmed that the egg which she held in her hand fell into the basin. She got it out and washed the blood off, but in vain. It appeared again in a moment. She washed and scrubbed, but she could not get it out. It was not long before the man came back from his journey, and the first thing which he asked for were the key and the egg. She gave them to him, but she trembled as she did so, and he saw at once by the red spots that she had been in the bloody chamber. "Since thou hast gone into the room against my will," said he, "thou shalt go back into it again thine own. Thy life is ended." He threw her down, dragged her thither by her hair, cut her head off on the block, and hewed her in pieces so that her blood ran on the ground. Then he threw her into the basin with the rest. "Now I will fetch myself the second," said the wizard, and again he went to the house, in the shape of a poor man, and begged. When the second daughter brought him a piece of bread, he caught her like the first, by simply touching her, and carried her away. She did not fare better than her sister. She allowed herself to be led away by her curiosity, opened the door of the bloody chamber, looked in, and had to atone for it with her life on the wizard's return. Then he went and brought the third sister, but she was clever and crafty. When he had given her the keys and the egg and had left her, she first put the egg away with great care, and then she examined the house and at last went into the forbidden room. Alas, what did she behold? Both her sisters lay there in the basin, cruelly murdered and cut in pieces. But she began to gather their limbs together and put them in order, head, body, arms, and legs. And when nothing further was wanting, the limbs began to move and unite themselves together. And both the maidens opened their eyes and were once more alive. Then they rejoiced and kissed and caressed each other. On his arrival, the man at once demanded the keys and the egg, and as he could perceive no trace of any blood on it, he said, "Thou hast stood the test, thou shalt be my bride." He now had no longer any power over her, and was forced to do whatever she desired. "Oh, very well," said she, "thou shalt first take a basketful of gold to my father." Hold on. "And mother, and carry it thyself on the back. In the meantime, I will prepare for the wedding." Then she ran to her sisters, whom she had hidden in the little chamber, and said, "The moment he has come when I can save you, or the moment has come when I can save you, the wretch shall himself carry you home again. But as soon as you are at home, and send help to me." She put both of them in a basket and covered them quite over with gold, so that nothing of them was to be seen. Then she called in the wizard and said to him, "Now carry the basket away, but I shall look through my little window and watch to see if thou stoppest on the way to stand or to rest." The wizard raised the basket on his back and went away with it, but it weighed him down so heavily that the perspiration streamed from his face. Then he sat down and wanted to rest a while, but immediately one of the girls in the basket cried, "I am looking through my little window, and I see thou art resting. Wilt thou go on at once?" He thought it was his bride who was calling that to him, and got up on his legs again. Once more he was going to sit down, but instantly she cried, "I am looking through my little window, and I see thou art resting. Wilt thou go on directly?" And whenever he stood still, she cried this, and then he was forced to go onwards, until at last, groaning and out of breath, he took the basket with the gold and the two maidens into their parents' house. At home, however, the bride prepared the marriage feast, and sent invitations to the friends of the wizard. Then she took a skull with grinning teeth, put some ornaments on it and a wreath of flowers, carried it upstairs to the garret window, and let it look out from thence. When all was ready, she got into a barrel of honey, and then cut the feather bed open and rolled herself in it, until she looked like a wondrous bird, and no one could recognize her. Then she went out of the house, and on her way she met some of the wedding guests, who asked, "O Fitcher's bird, how comest thou here? I come from Fitcher's house, quite near. And what may the young bride be doing? From cellar to garret she's whipped all clean, and now from the window she's peeping, I ween." At last she met the bridegroom, who was coming slowly back. He like the others, asked, "O Fitcher's bird, how comest thou here? I come from Fitcher's house, quite near. And what may the young bride be doing? From cellar to garret she swept all clean, and now from the window she's peeping, I ween." The bridegroom looked up, saw the decked-out skull, thought it was his bride, and nodded to her, greeting her kindly. But when he and his guests had all gone into the house, the brothers and kinsmen of the bride, who had been sent to rescue her, arrived. They locked all the doors of the house, that no one might escape, set fire to it, and the wizard and all his crew had to burn. All right. Oh, I'm pretty sure, Jam. So yeah, that's the Fitcher's bird. All right, the next one. That's actually right after Fitcher's bird, in the book, is called The Robber Bridegroom. All right. So the Robber Bridegroom. Again, not read this, so I have no idea what to expect. I was not expecting that story that I just read, but here we go. There was once on a time a miller who had a beautiful daughter, and she was grown up. And as she was grown up, he wished that she was provided for and well married. He thought, "If any good suitor comes and asks for her, I will give her to him." Not long afterwards, a suitor came who appeared to be very rich, and as the miller had no fault to find with him, he promised his daughter to him. The maiden, however, did not like him quite so much as a girl should like the man to whom she is engaged, and had no confidence in him. Whenever she saw or thought of him, she felt a secret horror. Once he said to her, "Thou art my betrothed, and yet thou hast never once paid me a visit." The maiden replied, "I know not where thy house is." And then said the bridegroom, "My house is out there in the dark forest." She tried to excuse herself and said she could not find the way there. The bridegroom said, "Next Sunday thou must come out there to me. I have already invited the guests, and I will strew ashes in order that thou mayest find thy way through the forest." When Sunday came and the maiden had to set out on her way, she became very uneasy. She herself knew not exactly why, and to mark her way she filled both her pockets full of peas and lentils. Ashes were strewn at the entrance of the forest, and these she followed, but at every step she threw a couple of peas on the ground. She walked almost the whole day until she reached the middle of the forest, where it was the darkest, and there stood a solitary house, which she did not like, for it looked so dark and dismal. She went inside, but no one was within, and the most absolute stillness reigned. Suddenly a voice cried, turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here." The maiden looked up and saw the voice came from a bird, which was hanging in a cage on the wall. Again it cried, turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here." Then the young maiden went on further from one room to another and walked through the whole house, but it was entirely empty, and not one human being was to be found. So she doesn't listen to the bird, she keeps going further into the house. Alright. At last she came to the cellar, and there sat an extremely aged woman whose head shook constantly. "Can you not tell me," said the maiden, "if my betrothed lives here?" "Alas, poor child," replied the old woman, "whither hast thou come? Thou art in a murderer's den. Thou thinkest thou art a bride, soon to be married, but thou wilt keep thy wedding with death. Look, I have been forced to put a great kettle on there, with water in it, and when they have thee in their power, they will cut thee to pieces without mercy, will cook thee and eat thee, for they are eaters of human flesh. If I do not have compassion for thee, and save thee, thou art lost." Thereupon the old woman led her behind a great hogshead, where she could not be seen. "Be still as a mouse," she said, or said she, "do not make a sound, or move, or all will be over with thee. At night, when the robbers are asleep, we will escape. I have long waited for an opportunity." Hardly was this done, then the godless crew came home. They dragged with them another young girl. They were drunk and paid no heed to her screams and lamentations. They gave her wine to drink, 3 glasses full, 1 glass of white wine, 1 glass of red, and a glass of yellow, and with this her heart burst in twain. Thereupon they tore off her delicate raiment, laid her on a table, cut her beautiful body in pieces, and strewed salt thereon. The poor bride, behind the cask, trembled and shook, for she saw right well what fate the robbers had destined for her. One of them noticed a gold ring on the little finger of the murdered girl, and as it would not come off at once, he took an axe and cut the finger off, but it sprang up in the air, away over the cask, and fell straight into the bride's bosom. The robber took a candle and wanted to look for it, but could not find it. Then another of them said, "Hast thou looked behind the great hogshead?" But the old woman cried, "Come and get something to eat, and leave off looking until morning. The finger won't run away from you." Then the robber said, "The old woman is right," and gave up their search, and sat down to eat, and the old woman poured a sleeping draught in their wine, so that they soon lay down in the cellar and slept and snored. When the bride heard that, she came out from behind the hogshead, and had to step over the sleepers, for they lay in rows on the ground, and great was her terror lest she should waken one of them. But God helped her, and she got safely over. The old woman went up with her, opened the doors, and they hurried out of the murderer's den with all the speed in their power. The wind had blown away the strewn ashes, but the peas and lentils had sprouted and grown up and showed them the way in the moonlight. They walked the whole night until in the morning they arrived at the mill, and then the maiden told her father everything exactly as it had happened. Sorry. When the day came when the wedding was to be celebrated, the bridegroom appeared, and the miller had invited all his relations and friends. As they sat at table, each was bidden to relate something. The bride sat still and said nothing. Then said the bridegroom to the bride, "Come, my darling, dost thou know nothing? Relate something to us like the rest." Right. She replied, "Then I will relate a dream. I was walking alone through a wood, and at last I came to a house in which no living soul was, but on the wall there was a bird in a cage which cried, 'Turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here.' And this it cried once more, My darling, I only dreamt this. Then I went through all the rooms, and they were all empty, and there was something so horrible about them. At last I went down into the cellar, and there sat a very old woman, whose head shook. I asked her, "Does my bridegroom live in this house?" She answered, "Alas, poor child, thou hast got into a murderer's den. Thy bridegroom does live here, but he will hew thee in pieces and kill thee, and then he will cook thee and eat thee. My darling, I only dreamt this." But the old woman hid me behind a great hogshead, and scarcely was I hidden when the robbers came home, dragging a maiden with them, to whom they gave 3 kinds of wine to drink, white, red, and yellow, with which her heart broke in twain. My darling, I only dreamt this. Thereupon they pulled off her pretty clothes and hewed her fair body in pieces on a table, and sprinkled them with salts. My darling, I only dreamt this. And one of the robbers saw that there was still a ring on her little finger, and as it was hard to draw off, he took an axe and cut it off. But the finger sprang up in the air, and sprang behind the great hogshead, and fell in my bosom. And there's the finger with the ring. And with these words she drew it forth and showed it to those present. The robber, who had during the story become as pale as ashes, leapt up and wanted to escape, but the guests held him fast and delivered him over to the justice. And then he and his whole troop were executed for their infamous deeds. Alright. That was the robber bridegroom, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on, I gotta respond to that. Alright. Alright. Let's see what this one is. This one is entitled The Juniper Tree. Like I said, again, I have not read these. I mean, there's happy endings, but at what cost to some of the characters. So, let's just see what this one entails. The Juniper Tree. This one is, I think, slightly longer. Yeah, it's one. Oh, not well, slightly longer. So, let me take a swig of water. I've never heard of this one either, Trey. Kevin Feige sent Pedro Pascal's sister the clown doll from Poltergeist. I hope, and I know this is going to sound mean, if you've seen Poltergeist, you know what I hope. Anyway. The Juniper Tree. It is now long ago, quite 2,000 years, since there was a rich man who had a beautiful and pious wife, and they loved each other dearly. They had, however, no children, though they wished for them very much, and the woman prayed for them day and night, but still they had none. Sorry, I'm getting messages from my siblings. Right. Sorry, family. Yes. Now there was a courtyard in front of their house in which was a juniper tree, and one day in winter the woman was standing beneath it, paring herself an apple. And while she was paring herself for the apple, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. "Ah," said the woman, and sighed right heavily, and looked at the blood before her, and was most unhappy. "Ah, if I had but a child as red as blood and as white as snow." Kind of sounds familiar. And while she thus spake, she became quite happy in her mind, and felt just as if that were going to happen. Then she went into the house, and a month went by, and the snow was gone, and 2 months, and then everything was green, and 3 months, and and then all the flowers came out of the earth, and 4 months, and then all the trees in the wood grew thicker, and the green branches were all close entwined, and birds sang until the wood resounded, and the blossoms fell from the trees. Then the 5th month passed away, and she stood under the juniper tree, which smelled so sweetly that her heart leapt, and she fell on her knees, and was beside herself with joy. And when the 6th month was over, the fruit was large and fine. And then she was quite still, and the 7th month she snatched at the juniper berries, and ate them greedily. Then she grew sick and sorrowful. Then the 8th month passed, and she called her husband to her, and wept and said, If I die, then bury me beneath the juniper tree. Then she was quite comforted and happy until the next month was over, and then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood. And when she beheld it, she was so delighted that she died. Okay. Then her husband buried her beneath the juniper tree, and began to weep sore. For some time he was more at ease, and though he still wept, he could bear it. After some time longer, he took another wife. But by the second wife he had a daughter, but the first wife's child was a little son, and he was as red as blood and as white as snow. When the woman looked at her daughter, she loved her very much, but then she looked at the little boy and seemed to cut her to her heart, for the thought came into her mind that he would always stand in her way, and she was forever thinking how she could get all the fortune for her daughter, and the evil one filled her mind with this till she was quite wroth with the little boy, and slapped him here and cuffed him there, until the unhappy child was in continual terror, for when he came out of school he had no peace in any place. One day the woman had gone upstairs to her room, and her little daughter went up too, and said, Mother, give me an apple. Yes, my child, said the woman, and gave her a fine apple out of the chest, but the chest had a great heavy lid, with a great sharp iron lock. Mother, said the little daughter, is brother not to have one too? This made the woman angry, but she said, Yes, when he comes out of school. And when she saw from the window that he was coming, it was just as if the devil entered into her. And she snatched at the apple and took it away again from her daughter, and said, Thou shalt not have one before thy brother. And she threw the apple into the chest and shut it. And the little boy came at the door, and the devil made her say to him kindly, My son, wilt thou have an apple? And she looked wickedly at him. Mother, said the little boy, how dreadful you look. Yes, give me an apple. Then it seemed to her as if she were forced to say to him, Come with me. And she opened the lid of the chest and said, Take out an apple for thyself. And while the little boy was stooping inside, the devil prompted her, and crash! She shut the lid down, and its head flew off, and fell among the red apples. Then she was overwhelmed with terror, and thought, If I could but make them think that it was not done by me. So she went upstairs to her room, to her chest of drawers, and took a white handkerchief out of the top drawer, and set the head on the neck again, and folded the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen. And she set him on a chair in front of the door, and put the apple in his hand. After this, Marlin Chen came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by the fire with a pan of hot water before her, which she was constantly stirring around. Mother, said Marlin Chen, brother is sitting at the door, and he looks quite white, and has an apple in his hand. I asked him to give me the apple, but he did not answer me, and I was quite frightened. Go back to him, said her mother, and if he will not answer thee, give him a box on the ear. So Marlin Chen went to him and said, Brother, give me the apple. But he was silent, and she gave him a box on the ear, on which his head fell down. Marlin Chen was terrified and began crying and screaming, and ran to her mother and said, Alas, mother, I have knocked my brother's head off. And she wept and could not be comforted. Marlin Chen, said the mother, What hast thou done? But be quiet and let no one know it. It cannot be helped now. We will make him into black puddings. Then the mother took the little boy and chopped him in pieces, put him into the pan, and made him into black puddings. But Marlin Chen stood by weeping, and all her tears fell into the pan, and there was no need of any salt. Then the father came home and sat down to dinner and said, But where is my son? And the mother served up a great dish of black puddings, and Marlin Chen wept and could not leave off. Then the father again said, But where is my son? Ah, said the mother, he has gone across the country to his mother's great uncle. He will stay there a while. And what is he going to do there? He did not even say goodbye to me. Oh, he wanted to go and asked me if he might stay 6 weeks. He's well taken care of there. Ah, said the man, I feel so unhappy lest all should not be right. He ought to have said goodbye to me. With that he began to eat, and said, Marlin Chen, why art thou crying? Thy brother will certainly come back. Then he said, Ah, wife, how delicious this food is. Give me some more. And the more he ate, the more he wanted to have. And he said, "Give me some more. You shall have none of it. It seems to me as if it were all mine." And he ate and threw all the bones under the table until he had finished the whole. But Martin went away to her chest of drawers and took her best silk handkerchief out of the bottom drawer and got all the bones from beneath the table and tied them up in her silk handkerchief and carried them outside the door, weeping tears of blood. Then the juniper tree began to stir itself, and the branches parted asunder and moved together again, just as if someone was rejoicing and clapping his hands. I don't know, Trey. At the same time, a mist seemed to arise from the tree, and in the center of this mist it burned like a fire, and a beautiful bird flew out of the fire, singing magnificently, and he flew high up in the air, and when he was gone, the juniper tree was just as it had been before, and the handkerchief with the bones was no longer there. Martin, however, was as gay and happy as if her brother was still alive, and she went merrily into the house and sat down to dinner and ate. But the bird flew away and lighted on a goldsmith's house and began to sing. "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I." The goldsmith was sitting in his workshop making a gold chain when he heard the bird which was sitting singing on his roof, and very beautiful the song seemed to him. He stood up, but as he crossed the threshold he lost one of his slippers. But he went away right up at the middle of the street, with one shoe on and one sock. He had his apron on, and in one hand he had the gold chain, and in the other the pincers, and the sun was shining brightly on the streets. Then he went right on and stood still and said to the bird, "Bird," said he then, "how beautifully thou canst sing. Sing me that piece again." "No," said the bird, "I'll not sing it twice for nothing. Give me the gold chain, and then I'll sing it again for thee." "There," said the goldsmith, "there is the gold chain for thee. Now sing me that song again." Then the bird came and took the gold chain in his right claw and went and sat in front of the goldsmith and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I." Then the bird flew away to a shoemaker and lighted on his roof and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I." The shoemaker heard that and ran out of doors in his shirt sleeves and looked up at his roof, and was forced to hold his hands before his eyes lest the sun should blind him. "Bird," said he, "how beautiful thou canst sing." Then he called in at his door, "Wife, just come outside, and there's a bird. Look at that bird, he just can sing well." Then he called his daughter and children and apprentices, boys and girls, and they all came up the street and looked at the bird and saw how beautiful he was, and what fine red and green feathers he had, and how like real gold his neck was, and how the eyes in his head shone like stars. "Bird," said the shoemaker, "now sing me that song again." "Nay," said the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. Thou must give me something." "Wife," said the man, go to the garret. Upon the top shelf there stands a pair of red shoes. Bring them down." Then the wife went and brought the shoes. "There, bird," said the man, "now sing me that piece again." Then the bird came and took the shoes in his left claw and flew back on the roof and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I." And when he had sung the whole song, he flew away. In his right claw he had the chain, and the shoes in his left. And he flew far to the mill, and the mill went clip, 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 clap, clip, clap, clip, clap. And in the mill sat 20 miller's men, hewing a stone and cutting hick hack, hick hack, hick hack, and the mill went clip, clap, clip, clap, clip, clap. Then the bird went and sat on a lime tree which stood in front of the mill and sang, "My mother, she killed me." Then one of them stopped working. "My father, he ate me." Then two more stopped working and listened to that. "My sister, little Marlinchen." Then four more stopped, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief. Now 8 only were hewing, laid them beneath, now only 5, the juniper tree, and now only 1, quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then the last stopped also and heard the last words. "Bird," said he, "how beautiful thou singest. Let me too hear that. Sing that once more for me." "Nay," said the bird, "I will not sing twice for nothing. Give me the millstone, and then I will sing it again." "Yes," said he, if it belonged to me, only thou shouldst have it." "Yes," said the others, "if he sings again, he shall have it." Then the bird came down, and the 20 millers all set to work with the beam and raised the stone up. And the bird stuck his neck through the hole and put the stone on as if it were a collar, and flew onto the tree again and sang. My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. And when he had done singing, he spread his wings, and in his right claw he had the chain, and in his left the shoes, and round his neck the millstone, and he flew far away to his father's house. In the room sat the father, the mother, and Marlinchen at dinner, and the father said, "How light-hearted I feel, how happy I am." "Nay," said the mother, "I feel so uneasy, just as if a heavy storm were coming." Marlinchen, however, sat weeping and weeping, and then came the bird flying, and as it seated itself on the roof, the father said, "I feel so truly happy, and the sun is shining so beautifully outside. I feel just as if I were about to see some old friend again." "Nay," said the woman, "I feel so anxious, my teeth chatter, and I seem to have a fire in my veins." And then she tore her stays open, but Marlinchen sat in the corner crying, and held her plate before her eyes and cried till it was quite wet. Then the bird sat on the juniper tree and sang. "My mother, she killed me." Then the mother stopped her ears and shut her eyes, and would not see or hear, but there was a roaring in her ears like the most violent storm, and her eyes burnt and flashed like lightning. "My father, he ate me." "Ah, mother," said the man, "that is a beautiful bird. He sings so splendidly, and the sun shines so warm, and there's a smell just like cinnamon. My sister, little Marlinchen." And Marlinchen laid her head on her knees and wept without ceasing, but the man said, "I am going out. I am going out. I must see the bird quite close." "Oh, don't go," said the woman. "I feel as if the whole house were shaking and on fire." But the man went out and looked at the bird. Two pages are stuck together. "Gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I." On this the bird let the golden chain fall, and it fell exactly round the man's neck, and so exactly round it that it fitted beautifully. Then he went on in and said, "Just look at what a fine bird that is, and what a handsome gold chain he has given me, and how pretty he is." But the woman was terrified and fell down on the floor in the room, and her cap fell off her head. Then sang the bird once more. "My mother, she killed me. Would that I were 1,000 feet beneath the earth, so as not to hear that. My father, he ate me." Then the woman fell down again as if dead. My sister, little Marlinchen. "Ah," said Marlinchen, "I will go out and see if the bird will give me anything." And she went out, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silk handkerchief. Then he threw down the shoes to her, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then she was light-hearted and joyous, and she put on the new red shoes and danced and leaped in the house. "Ah," she said, "I was so sad when I went out, and now I'm so light-hearted. That is a splendid bird. He has given me a pair of red shoes." "Well," said the woman, and sprang to her feet, and her hair stood up like flames on fire, "I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I, too, will go out and see if my heart feels lighter." And as she went out the door, the crash! The bird threw down the millstone on her head, and she was entirely crushed by it. The father and Marlinchen heard what had happened and went out, and smoke, flames, and fire were rising from the place. And when that was over, there stood the little brother, and he took his father and Marlinchen by the hand, and all three were right glad, and they went into the house to dinner, and ate. Very interesting story. So, that is the juniper tree. I don't know about this one, though. We'll see. So, somewhat of a happy ending. Kind of still dark how it got there, but still. Nope. This one is called The Poor Boy in the Grave. The Poor Boy in the Grave. So, let's see. This one is, let me see. This one is not that long at all. There was once a poor shepherd boy whose father and mother were dead, and he was placed by the authorities in the house of a rich man who was to feed him and bring him up. The man and his wife had, however, bad hearts and were greedy and anxious about their riches, and vexed whenever any one put a morsel of their bread in his mouth. The poor young fellow might do what he liked. He got a little to eat, but only so many blows the more. One day he had to watch a hen and her chickens, but she ran through a quick-set hedge with them, and the hawk darted down instantly and carried her off through the air. The boy called, "Thief, thief, rascal," with all the strength of his body. But what good did that do? The hawk did not bring its prey back again. The man heard the noise, ran to the spot, and as soon as he saw that his hen was gone, he fell in a rage and gave the boy such a beating that he could not stir for 2 days. Then he had to take care of the chickens without the hen, but now his difficulty was greater, for one ran here and the other there. He thought he was doing a very wise thing when he tied them all together with a string, because then the hawk would not be able to steal any of them away from him. But he was very much mistaken. After 2 days, worn out with running about and hunger, he fell asleep. The bird of prey came and seized one of the chickens, and as the others were tied fast to it, it carried them all off together, perched itself on a tree, and devoured them. The farmer was just coming home. When he saw the misfortune, he got angry and beat the boy so unmercifully that he was forced to lie in bed for several days. When he was on his legs again, the farmer said to him, "Thou art too stupid for me. I cannot make a herdsman of thee. Thou must go as an errand boy." Then he sent him to the judge, to whom he was to carry a basket full of grapes, and gave him a letter as well. On the way, hunger and thirst tormented the unhappy boy so violently that he ate 2 of the bunches of grapes. He took the basket to the judge, but when the judge had read the letter and counted the bunches, he said, "2 clusters are wanting." The boy confessed quite honestly that, driven by hunger and thirst, he had devoured 2 which were wanting. The judge wrote a letter to the farmer and asked for the same number of grapes again. These also the boy had to take to him with the letter. As he again was so extremely hungry and thirsty, he could not help it, and again ate 2 bunches. But first he took the letter out of the basket, put it under a stone, and seated himself thereon in order that the letter might not see and betray him. The judge, however, again made him give an explanation about the missing bunches. "Ah," said the boy, "how have you learnt that? The letter could not know about it, for I put it under a stone before I did it." The judge could not help laughing at the boy's simplicity, and sent the man a letter wherein he cautioned him to keep the poor boy better, and not let him want for meat and drink, and also that he was to teach him what was right and what was wrong. "I will soon show thee the difference," said the hard man. "If thou wilt eat, thou must work, and if thou dost anything wrong, thou shalt be quite sufficiently taught by blows." The next day he set him a hard task. He was to chop 2 bundles of straw for food for the horses, and then the man threatened, "In 5 hours," said he, "I shall be back again if the straw is not cut to chaff by that time. I will beat thee until thou canst not move a limb." The farmer went with his wife, the manservant, and the girl to the yearly fair and left nothing behind for the boy but a small bit of bread. The boy seated himself on the bench and began to work with all his might. As he got warm over it, he put his little coat off and threw it on the straw. In his terror lest he should not get done in time, he kept constantly cutting, and in his haste, without noticing, he chopped his little coat as well as the straw. He became aware of the misfortune too late. There was no repairing. "Ah," cried he, "now all is over with me. The wicked man did not threaten me for nothing. If he comes back and sees what I have done, he will kill me. Rather than that, I will take my own life." I used to read those books, Soul. I used to read those books. Somewhere I think I still have copies. Right. The boy had once heard the farmer's wife say, "I have a pot with poison in it under my bed." She, however, had only said that to keep away greedy people, for there was honey in it. The boy crept under the bed, brought out the pot, and ate all that was in it. "I do not know," said he. "Folks say death is bitter, but it tastes very sweet to me." It is no wonder the farmer's wife has so often longed for death. He seated himself in a little chair and was prepared to die, but instead of becoming weaker, he felt himself strengthened by the nourishing food. It cannot have been poison, thought he, but the farmer once said there was a small bottle of poison for flies in the box in which he keeps his clothes. Now, that no doubt will be the true poison and bring death to me. It was, however, no poison for flies, but Hungarian wine. The boy got out the bottle and emptied it. "This does taste sweet too," said he, but shortly after, when the wine began to mount into his brain and stupefy him, he thought his end was drawing near. "I feel that I must die," said he. "I will go away to the churchyard and seek a grave." He staggered out, reached the churchyard, and laid himself in a newly dug grave. He lost his senses more and more. In the neighborhood was an inn where a wedding was being kept. When he heard the music, he fancied he was already in paradise until at length he lost all consciousness. The poor boy never woke again. The heat of the strong wine and the cold night dew deprived him of life, and he remained in the grave in which he had laid himself. When the farmer heard the news of the boy's death, he was terrified, and afraid of being brought to justice indeed. His distress took such a powerful hold of him that he fell fainting to the ground. His wife, who was standing on the hearth with a pan of hot fat, ran to him to help him, but the flames darted against the pan, the whole house caught fire, in a few hours it lay in ashes, and the rest of the years they had to live they passed in poverty and misery, tormented by the pangs of conscience. So, not quite as dark. More like poetic justice. Sort of an ending. Alright. Last tale I have. This is a bit longer, or about the same, I don't know. I'll see. It's called The Goose Girl. The Goose Girl. Never read it. Don't know what to expect. There was once upon a time an old queen whose husband had been dead for many years, and she had a beautiful daughter. When the princess grew up, she was betrothed to a prince who lived at a great distance. When the time came for her to be married, and she had to journey forth into the distant kingdom, allergies. The aged queen packed up for her many costly vessels of silver and gold, and trinkets also of gold and silver, and cups and jewels, and short, everything which appertained to a royal dowry, for which she loved her child with all her heart. She likewise sent her maid-in-waiting, who was to ride with her and hand her over to the bridegroom, and each had a horse for the journey. But the horse of the king's daughter was called Falada, and could speak. So when the hour of parting had come, and the aged mother went into her bedroom, took a small knife and cut her finger with it until it bled, and she held a white handkerchief to it, into which she let 3 drops of blood fall, gave it to her daughter, and said, "Dear child, preserve this carefully. It will be of service to you on your way." So they took a sorrowful leave of each other. The princess put the piece of cloth in her bosom, mounted her horse, and then went away to her bridegroom. After she had ridden for a while, she felt a burning thirst, and said to her waiting maid, "Dismount and take my cup which thou hast brought with thee for me, and get me some water from the stream, for I should like to drink." "If you are thirsty," said the waiting maid, "get off your horse yourself and lie down and drink out of the water. I don't choose to be your servant." So in her great thirst, the princess alighted and bent down over the water in the stream and drank, and was not allowed to drink out of the golden cup. Then she said, "Ah, heaven," and the 3 drops of blood answered, "If thy mother knew, her heart would break." But the king's daughter was humble, said nothing, and mounted her horse again. She rode some miles further, but the day was warm, the sun scorched her, and she was thirsty once more. And when they came to a stream of water, she again cried to her waiting maid, "Dismount and give me some water in my golden cup," for she had long ago forgotten the girl's ill words. But the waiting maid said still more haughtily, "If you wish to drink, drink as you can. I don't choose to be your maid." Then in her great thirst the king's daughter alighted, bent over the flowing stream, wept, and said, "Ah, heaven," and the drops of blood again replied, "If thy mother knew this, her heart would break." And as she was thus drinking and leaning right over the stream, the handkerchief with the 3 drops of blood fell out of her bosom and floated away with the water without her observing it, so great was her trouble. The waiting maid, however, had seen it, and she rejoiced to think that she had now power over the bride, for since the princess had lost the drops of blood, she had become weak and powerless. So now when she wanted to mount her horse again, the one that was called Falada, the waiting maid said, "Falada is more suitable for me, and my nag will do for thee." And the princess had to be content with that. Then the waiting maid, with many hard words, bade the princess exchange her royal apparel for her own shabby clothes, and at length she was compelled to swear by the clear sky above her that she would not say one word of this to anyone at the royal court, and if she had not taken this oath she would have been killed on the spot. But Falada saw all this and observed it well. The waiting maid now mounted Falada, and the true bride the bad horse, and thus they travelled onwards, until at length they entered the royal palace. There were great rejoicings over her arrival, and the prince sprang forward to meet her, lifted the waiting maid from her horse, and thought she was his consort. She was conducted upstairs, but the real princess was left standing below. Then the old king looked out of the window and saw her standing in the courtyard, and how dainty and delicate and beautiful she was, and instantly went to the royal apartment and asked the bride about the girl she had with her who was standing down below in the courtyard, and who she was. I picked her up on my way for a companion, gave the girl something to work at, that she may not stand idle. But the old king had no work for her, and knew of none, so he said, I have a little boy who tends the geese, she may help him. The boy was called Conrad, and the true bride had to help him tend the geese. Soon afterwards, the false bride said to the young king, Dearest husband, I beg you to do me a favor. He answered, I will do so most willingly. Then send for the knacker, and have the head of the horse on which I rode here cut off, for it vexed me on the way. In reality, she was afraid that the horse might tell how she had behaved to the king's daughter. Then she succeeded in making the king promise that it should be done, and the faithful Falada was to die. This came to the ears of the real princess, and she secretly promised to pay the knacker a piece of gold if he would perform a small service for her. There was a great dark-looking gateway in the town, through which morning and evening she had to pass with the geese. Would he be so good as to nail up Falada's head on it, so that she might see him again, more than once? The knacker's man promised to do that, and cut off the head and nailed it fast beneath the dark gateway. Early in the morning, when she and Conrad drove out their flock beneath the gateway, she said in passing, Alas, Falada, hanging there. Then the head answered, Alas, young queen, how ill you fare. If this your tender mother knew, your heart would surely break in two. Then they went still further out of the town, and drove their geese into the country. And when they had come to the meadow, she sat down and unbound her hair, which was like pure gold. And Conrad saw it, and delighted in its brightness, and wanted to pluck out a few hairs. Then she said, Blow, blow, thou gentle wind, I say, blow Conrad's little hat away, and make him chase it here and there, until I have unbraided all my hair, and bound it up again. And there was such a violent wind that it blew Conrad's hat far away across country, and he was forced to run after it. When he came back, she had finished combing her hair, and was putting it up again, and he could not get any of it. Then Conrad was angry, and would not speak to her, and thus they watched the geese until the evening, and then they went home. Next day, when they were driving the geese off to the dark gateway, the maiden said, Alas, Falada, hanging there. Falada answered, Alas, young queen, how ill you fare. If this your tender mother knew, her heart would surely break in two. And she sat down again in the field and began to comb out her hair, and Conrad ran and tried to clutch it, so she said in haste, Blow, blow, thou gentle wind, I say, blow Conrad's little hat away, and make him chase it here and there, until I have braided all my hair, and bound it up again. Then the wind blew, and blew his little hat off his head, and far away, and Conrad was forced to run after it. And when he came back, her hair had been put up a long time, and he could get none of it. And so they looked at their geese, all till evening came. But in the evening, after they had got home, Conrad went to the old king and said, I won't tend the geese with that girl any longer. Why not? Inquired the aged king. Oh, because she vexes me the whole day long. Then the aged king commanded him to relate what it was that she did to him. And Conrad said, In the morning, when we pass beneath the dark gateway with the flock, there is a sorry horse's head on the wall, and she says to it, Alas, Falada, hanging there, and the head replies, Alas, young queen, how ill you fare. If this your tender mother knew, her heart would surely break in two. And Conrad went on to relate what happened on the geese pasture, and how when he had to chase his hat. The aged king commanded him to drive his flock out again next day, and as soon as the morning came, he placed himself behind the dark gateway, and heard how the maiden spoke to the head of Falada, and then he too went into the country, and hid himself in the thicket in the meadow. There he soon saw with his own eyes the goose girl and the goose boy bringing their flock, and how after a while she sat down and unplaited her hair, which shone with radiance, and soon she said, Blow, blow, thou gentle wind, I say, blow Conrad's little hat away, and make him chase it here and there, until I've braided all my hair and bound it up again. Then came a blast of wind and carried off Conrad's hat so that he had to run far away, while the maiden quietly went on combing and plaiting all her hair, all of which the king observed. Then, quite unseen, he went away, and when the goose girl came home in the evening, he called her aside and asked why she did all these things. I may not tell you that, and I dare not lament my sorrows to any human being, for I have sworn not to do so by the heaven which is above me. If I had not done that, I should have lost my life. He urged her and left her no peace, but he could draw nothing from her. Then said he, If thou wilt not tell me anything, tell thy sorrows to the iron stove there. And he went away. Then she crept into the iron stove, and began to weep and lament, and emptied her whole heart, and said, Here I am deserted by the whole world, and yet I am a king's daughter, and a false waiting maid has by force brought me to such a pass that I have been compelled to put off my royal apparel, and she has taken my place with my bridegroom, and I have to perform mental service as a goose girl. If my mother didn't but know that, her heart would break. The aged king, however, was standing outside by the pipe of the stove, and was listening to what she said, and heard it. Then he came back again, and bade her come out of the stove. And royal garments were placed on her, and it was marvelous how beautiful she was. The aged king summoned his son, and revealed to him that he had got the false bride, who was only a waiting maid, but that the true one was standing there as the sometime goose girl. The young king rejoiced with all his heart when he saw her beauty and youth, and a great feast was made ready, to which all the people and all good friends were invited. At the head of the table sat the bridegroom with the king's daughter at one side of him, and the waiting maid on the other. But the waiting maid was blinded, and did not recognize the princess in her dazzling array. When they had eaten and drunk, and were merry, the aged king asked the waiting maid as a riddle, what a person deserved who had behaved in such a way to her master, and at the same time related the whole story and asked what sentence such an one merited. Then the false bride said, She deserves no better fate than to be stripped entirely naked, and put in a barrel which is studded inside with pointed nails, and 2 white horses should be harnessed to it, which will drag her along through one street and after another until she is dead. It is thou, said the aged king, and thou hast pronounced thine own sentence, and thus shall be done unto thee. And when the sentence had been carried out, the young king married his true bride, and both of them reigned over their kingdom in peace and happiness. So a happily ever after, with a death. Yeah, so basically, the false bride was stripped naked, put into a barrel which is studded inside with pointed nails, and then, when it's harnessed to 2 white horses, dragged through the streets until she is dead. And those are the fairy tales, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, she pronounced her own sentence. Which I find ironic. And there it is, chap. Again, I've never read these. So. Pretty dark. Pretty dark. So. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to look through the H.P. Lovecraft tales that I have to see which one or ones I might read next reading stream, which will be this Thursday about the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then once I know that, I'll kind of, have an idea of how long the stream is going to be. If I'm just going to read one or multiple ones, because they can be short, but really not as short as the fairy tales. So we'll see. We'll see what is in. Sorry, my camera's gone out of focus. What's in the copy of the H.P. Lovecraft tales I have? Now you're sleeping with 4 nightlights on. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long they are, Trey. So I don't know if I'll be reading just one or what have you, basically. But like the book itself is like, well, let's see, it is about this thick. There's quite a bit in it. So he wrote a lot of stories. But tomorrow I'll be playing the game on my YouTube, Kick, and Twitch. So if you watch me in either of those places, this is a game where I literally should not be making any sound, despite having a microphone on, so you all can have fun with the sound alerts if you want, to see how many times you can get me killed during tomorrow's game. My brother still... I think my brother took all the Goosebumps books with him. So I don't have any. I've read them, but I don't have any. So I have read the Goosebumps books. I have read the Fear Street books, and I have read the Scary Tales to Tell in the Dark books. So yeah, or Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I should say. I've read those books. I just don't know where the latter two are, and like I said, the Goosebumps books my brother took with him, so he has them. But tomorrow I'll be playing the game. Shh. And then Friday and Saturday is kind of up in the air as to what game I play. I did reach out to the guys helping me make the thumbnails, and I told them no rush, but if I get the thumbnails before Friday evening, thereabouts, I'll probably be, like, you know, try my hand at playing the first Borderlands game, either Friday evening or Saturday afternoon. Maybe do a watch party on my Discord Saturday evening. We'll see. Sunday, this coming Sunday and the following Sunday, Talk Nerdy to Us will be on my channel. Since My Nerdy Home did it twice in a row, I'm going to be doing it twice in a row, and then we'll be back on a regular schedule. So I will be, like I said, this coming Sunday, Talk Nerdy to Us will be on my YouTube channel. I already have, yeah, I know it's pretty dated, but I have never played it before, so it's my first time playing it. And I already have 3 topics, essentially, for Talk Nerdy, because Alice in Borderlands Season 3 is dropping Thursday, so I'm going to be watching that. James Gunn has said basically the plans for the DCU have changed. Shocker, no shocker there. And Shrek 5 apparently has been delayed until 2027. So yeah. But anyway, chat. And we'll see what other topics come up between now and Sunday. I know it's not exactly breaking news if you're talking. I don't like, you know, no matter what you're talking about, basically. But yeah, so I have 3 topics already that I have for this coming Sunday. I'm just saying, like, you know, it's basically translation. It's like he lost Warner Brothers several $100 million and was ordered to course correct. Oh, the Sleepaway Camp reboot. Yes, that too. Apparently there's going to be a Sleepaway Camp reboot. So I might talk about that if I can find, like, you know, an article to show the chat. But yeah, so if anyone's watched Sleepaway Camp, you know that that's going to be a very interesting reboot. Extremely interesting reboot. If you have not seen it, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything because, so it's yeah. I can't say too much because you know, there is a twist, and it's a very, very revealing twist. So yeah, I figured she'd be against it. I'm not saying I'm cautiously optimistic, but the original writer-director is coming back. I don't know. We'll see. Kenan Thompson has never really demonstrated anything like to be overtly political, so I'm hoping it's just a straight reboot of the first film. If they're going to do it, Hollywood has been rebooting their properties for decades now. Like, remakes and reboots are not a new thing, basically. It's when it becomes a cash grab and then when it's, like, annoying. But Hollywood's been remaking their movies for decades. When I say decades, I mean even going back to the 30s and 40s, they've been remaking their movies. So this is nothing new. This is not a new Hollywood concept, and yes, he's at least not Jordan Peele. He's at least not Jordan Peele, so I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt until I see something definite either way. But that's something I'll be talking about. But I'll be talking about that. So we'll see. We'll see. But anyway, chat, that is the reading stream for tonight. The 5 fairy tales that I have never read before, and I could see them becoming horror movies. I could see at least a few of them becoming definite horror movies. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, have a good rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world, and I will see you all tomorrow evening on my YouTube, Kick, and Twitch for the gaming stream of Shh. Good night, and peace.